Okay, Miss Mills is experiencing some technical difficulty. Give me a minute. Let me check with her. Okay, we'll now ask Miss Shandy Mills to give us a word of prayer. Shandy, go ahead.
Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you this afternoon.
Give it some more volume.
Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you this afternoon with our cup upturned, dear Jesus. Father God, bless all who taking part in this procedure this afternoon, dear Jesus. Father, bless whatever we're about to say, might be to the honor and the glory to someone who is listening to us this afternoon, dear Lord. Father God, thank you for what you're about to do and what you're going to do for us, dear Lord Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Shandy, for the
You're
blessings
welcome,
of this
darling.
afternoon. As part of the annual commemoration of Caribbean Wellness Week, September 11th to September 17th, the SKN Moves Campaign 2021, the Health Promotion Unit of the Ministry of Health has organized this virtual seminar entitled Solutions to Patient Challenges in Living with NCDs. Hashtag, no action is too small, no voice is insignificant. To bring together experts in various fields to provide support in the areas of NCDs. It is anticipated that this seminar will present a united front in combating the incident of NCDs and their impact on individuals, families, and societies. This forum is also a platform to build public awareness of local NCDs, organizations, and the services which they provide relative to decreasing NCD. So we've organized a packed afternoon with dynamic presenters. There will be periods of questions and answers. Please send questions in the chat and they will be addressed at the appropriate time. So we'll get the ball rolling. Our first speaker for this afternoon is a district medical officer for the St. Peter's area, and she will provide a situation analysis of NCDs in St. Kitts and Nevis. We'll now have Dr. Frank present.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will attempt to share my screen. Is it being seen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we'll be looking at the non-communicable disease situation analysis, information provided by the epidemiology unit. Looking at the global situation, we recognize that the NCDs kill 41 million people every year, which accounts for 71% of all the deaths globally. More than 15 million persons die from the NCDs between the ages of 30 and 69. 85% of these premature deaths occur in low to middle income countries. So, you know, we're right up that alley. And we're looking at cardiovascular diseases, cancers, respiratory diseases, and diabetes as the leading cause of NCD deaths. And together, these deaths account for 80% of the NCD deaths in total. Right, looking at this graph, you can see that the cardiovascular disease, they count for 17.9% of the 17.9 million persons per year that have the cardiovascular disease, 9.3% of cancers following, then respiratory diseases, 4.1 million per year, and then the diabetes, 1.5 million per year cases. Now, these are the global risk factors, which look very familiar to us. We have the modifiable risk factors like the tobacco use, physical inactivity, harmful use of alcohol, and unhealthy diets. The metabolic risk factors, you have the overweight or obesity, raised blood pressure, high blood fat or hyperlipidemia, high blood glucose levels or hyperglycemia. Now, as we look at the situation analysis of NCDs in St. Kitts and Nevis, we recognize that of the 3,738 deaths reported between 2009 and 2018, 64.9% was due to NCDs. So it looks very much familiar or very close to the global look or the global situation analysis. The three main causes of the deaths, the NCDs, which cause death, the cardiovascular diseases, which account for 33%, the cancers, which account for 18.5%, and the diabetes complication, which account for 11.4%. From the cardiovascular disease, we see stroke and ischemic heart disease are the leading causes of deaths from the cardiovascular diseases. For stroke, it's 35.1%, and for the ischemic heart disease, 24.2%. Now, note that the mortality rate has increased significantly between 2009 and 2018. And although these figures represent those years, it similarly looks the same even to today. So we see that diabetes, the mortality rate has increased from 86.5 to 122.8 per 100,000 population, and the cardiovascular disease 217.4 to 278.3. So there has been an increase for the cardiovascular disease, but it has been significantly, steadily high throughout the years. And these graphs, they represent the same. You can see through this graph that the cardiovascular disease has remained steadily high, almost the same number of deaths per annum throughout the years. Now, looking at hypertension and diabetes, what we've been hearing all the time, that these are the leading cause of morbidity in the Federation. There's been an average incidence of hypertension and diabetes at the community-based centers. Now, this is the community-based centers alone. So during the years 2007 to 2019, we've had 93 new cases For hypertensives and diabetics, 99 new cases. Within 2019, we realized that there have been a little more than double the amount of females to males for persons who have diabetes. For the females, they have 69.5%, and the males 31.5%. And inside of those figures, 0.5% are under the age of 18. And when we look at the hypertensives, in 2019 alone, you have recorded 1,396 persons, 1,396 females, sorry, and 690 males that are recorded at the community-based centers, 67% to 33%, and none of them are under the age of 18. This is significant as well that we see recorded at JNF, the General Hospital. We've had 139 amputations. And we know that most of the time it's because of uncontrolled diabetes that have produced peripheral arterial diseases and has led to amputation. Looking at cancers, we see that there have been 780 new cases of cancers in the past years, from 2011 to 2020, which gives on average 78 cases per year. The breast cancers are the leading type of cancers within those years, with 176 cases nationally. The prostate cancer, 165 cases nationally. Cervical cancer, 91 cases. Colon cancer, 74 cases. And skin cancer, 72 cases. And this is what it looks like graphically over those years. Now, the risk factors were placed identical to the global risk factors because it's the same risk factors according to studies that have been done by the Ministry of Health. We recognize that it's still modifiable and the metabolic risk factors that are the causes of these NCDs. The modifiable causes or risk factors will be the tobacco use, the physical inactivity or the sedentary lifestyle, the harmful use of alcohol, and unhealthy diets. Unhealthy diets leading to overweight or obesity crisis. You have raised blood pressure or hypertension, high levels of fat in the blood or hyperlipidemia, and hyperglycemia or high blood glucose levels. So this, in a nutshell, has been the situation analysis of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, for that breakdown and detailed analysis to where we are in regards to NCDs within the Federation. There is much work to be done, and no action is too small, no voice is insignificant in combating NCDs. As we heard, hypertension and diabetes are the leading causes of morbidity and deaths within the Federation. And based on the registration at the local community health centers, there are about 600 to 700 men registered, while there are 1,900 to 2,100 female. And that's a vast difference. And this is for both hypertension and diabetes. Thank you again, Dr. Frank. This seminar is divided into 3 segments. Segment 1 is a brief overview of the NCDs by our 5 specialists. Asthma and other respiratory conditions by Dr. Al Peer, cardiovascular conditions by Dr. Caroline Lawrence, cancers by Dr. Marissa Grant Tate, and diabetes by Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Jr., and autoimmune conditions by Dr. Babu. For section 2, we will hear from persons living with NCDs, how it has impacted their life, and what modifications they had to make in meeting these challenges. For section 3, we'll now be introduced to, enlightened about, and briefed on the support services available to persons and families living with NCDs. This afternoon, I am your host, nurse Miss Mary Cates. We will now allow our 5 specialists to provide their overview on NCDs. An alert will be sound 2 minutes before the time elapsed for each speaker. Our first speaker will be Dr. Al Peer, speaking to us on asthma and other respiratory conditions. Dr. Peer?
Hello, Sister Keynes. Good day. Thank you again for the invitation. I truly appreciate it. Always happy to speak about something so consequential, and of course, certainly being diluted by cases of COVID on the island. I think individuals have forgotten that NCDs have not gone anywhere, and they're still pretty much with us and still causing deaths in the same proportions that Dr. Frank spoke about earlier. If you allow me to share my screen with you. Now, looking at the audience, and I'm so happy when I look at the cross section of the audience, and we've always spoken about the fact that to address any of these causes or these diseases meaningfully, we have to adopt what is an all of society approach. Well, I think looking at the participants, this is pretty much a good cross section of our society, and I hope that we can leave here with some nuggets of information, something that we can begin to do immediately, and something that may require more of a collective effort. So I'm going to speak briefly about chronic respiratory diseases. And I think it's important to just rehash a very important point that Dr. Frank made earlier, which is chronic diseases to date still account for 71% of deaths, which means that 7 out of 10 people dying today globally are dying as a result of a chronic disease. But more importantly, or well, equally importantly, is the fact that it accounts for 80% of our health expenditure. So when we see there needs to be bigger budget allotments for healthcare, when we see a lot of the machinery and equipment and specialties that are required to be funded, it is as a result of the increasing need to adequately treat, to adequately manage and diagnose chronic diseases. So 80% of our health expenditure goes towards chronic diseases. The list of diseases that we look at when we speak of chronic respiratory conditions: asthma and respiratory allergies, which is perhaps more common to us; chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is known as COPD; occupational lung diseases, which is something that I hope to just talk briefly on because it's something that I don't think is being monitored nearly enough, as many companies on island today do not have an occupational safety and health program and do not monitor for the type of work conditions that may actually predispose individuals to those conditions. The other one, sleep apnea syndrome, which is increasing and is directly correlated to our increasing rates of obesity on the island for all the modifiable factors that Dr. Frank spoke about as relates to diet, hyperlipidemia, and the likes. The others, allergic rhinitis and pulmonary hypertension, which often has a very close correlation to cardiovascular diseases, which Dr. Lawrence will speak about later today. Now, why is this a big deal? I think by now we can all agree that chronic respiratory conditions, but NCDs, non-communicable diseases on the whole, are in fact a big deal. They're a big deal not merely because of death. They're a big deal because so often that the individual begins to suffer from very early on in their life, limiting their capability to actually live a fully active life. So I think we all agree that if you live long enough, you will die from something. And what I mean by that is the fact that death is inevitable, right? We will all die. But the question is, does it have to be so slow? Does it have to be painful? And does it have to be premature? And this is where NCDs gives us that unique opportunity, because so much of it is modifiable, so much of it is preventable. So when we speak of disability as relates to chronic conditions, asthma, the individual, for example, who has several asthma exacerbations throughout the week, the individual, for example, who has to choose what work they might do because they're asthmatic or there's a chronic respiratory condition. What does that translate into from a statistical standpoint? So that means an individual, for example, who is alive, but who is struggling with a chronic condition that needs daily treatment, that needs frequent hospitalizations, that individual has some degree of disability. And that disability is referred to as disability adjusted life years. I've spoken about it ad nauseum. It's an important statistics because it really means that so many times we as doctors are comforted by the fact that someone is still alive. But I like to say that that person is alive, but there's no life in those years because there's so many limitations. And if you look at this graph at the bottom, typically this is what it would look like, right? So somebody goes for the 20, 30, and 40 years, and this is where the preventative measures that we take that we adopt become very effective, right? I think I'm not sharing my screen fully. Am I? See, I'm not using. How do I? Can you see my screen, Dr. Siskins?
Yes, I am seeing it, but it's
yes, I would like
to
to
sharing from the PowerPoint.
Right.
So start the.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So very early on in life, this is where the preventative measures are actually most effective in somebody's 20s, 30s, and 40s. Now, as those preventative measures, which some of us can actually implement because a lot of it are modifiable by our own actions, so much of it is lifestyle, right? The earlier those preventative measures kick in, the longer we delay the onset of those diseases. So typically, if all goes well, you see that that disease onset starts around the age 45 to 50, the fourth to fifth decade of life. And then that individual moves into retirement. There's more sedentarism, there's more obesity, and all these underlying risk factors begin to kick in and cause some type of illness that really limits or impacts the individual. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the age of onset of disease is sliding more and more to the left. So individuals there's a new onset of diabetes, type 2 diabetes at the age of 20. You can very well imagine that this graph for care here begins to move and that individual begins to require care so much earlier on in life. And then of course, that has an impact in terms of the end of life of that individual, the life expectancy of an individual who starts to present with an illness from so early on. So the typical course of chronic diseases and respiratory diseases included, this is the typical thing. So you have a healthy population, and this is where primary prevention is most effective. There are genetic and risk factors, right? The genetic factors may not be modifiable, but the risk factors are to some extent. And then disease sets in. And that's where individuals for the first time would actually make some type of approach to a doctor. That individual becomes diagnosed with a particular condition, and then the disease progresses. And so much, and again here, I want to speak to the fact that the disease progression is so heavily dependent on the type of intervention that is undertaken at that point. So what are some of the risk factors we want to look at when we speak of chronic respiratory conditions? Well, obesity, malnutrition. And why is obesity a factor? Well, we see individuals who are obese are more likely to suffer from asthma, and of course, the type of asthma that requires frequent treatment. Sleep apnea, for example, there's obesity hypoventilation syndromes, right? Inactivity, which of course leads to obesity. Smoking, active and passive. Individuals, for example, we may not smoke, but we have friends who smoke, or we have family members who smoke. We live in a smoking home. Alcoholism, pollutions, both indoor, at home, and in the workplace, right? Pollutions outdoor. One of the things that we've spoken about a lot lately, Sahara dust. And of course, sometimes it's important to ask ourselves what's on that dust coming across the Atlantic. And if as recent as 2005, a survey was done. What mic on? In recently, as 2005, a survey was done of Sahara dust and showed at least 64% of silica. Now, there's a disease called silicosis. Now, the question is whether Sahara dust can actually predispose someone to this. The other, in highly agricultural areas, perhaps more common in rural areas, is slash and burn. Individuals, for example, would actually cut and burn large portions of land with the goal to eventually create some type of farming activity. Construction, as there's a boom in construction industries. If you live anywhere near a construction site and you're asthmatic or you have allergic rhinitis or any of those likes, it is not uncommon that you would actually sometimes begin to see an exacerbation of your symptoms. The others are other types of exposures from infections, radiation, and so on that would actually predispose one to those types of conditions. Smoking. Well, smoking is, I was happy to see in St. Kitts that smoking, when compared to the rest of the region, smoking is not necessarily perhaps a big cultural phenomena, as you may see in other areas, but smoking is still a risk factor, and we do see practices here and there, and it is one of the most important risk factors for lung disease, for chronic respiratory diseases. And this study, which is a very small study done by some physicians in the UK, showed that even stopping smoking at 35 or 45 years actually significantly reduced the mortality of individuals who were smokers initially. If you look at what it looks like for smoking in St. Kitts as compared to the rest of the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, St. Kitts is at the bottom of the table, but by no means does this make this less important a risk factor, right? So we see a predominance of male over female in terms of the number of smokers. Another thing that has helped is that as we move towards a more from middle and high income, we move away from some of the indoor pollutants, right? So individuals, for example, maybe people who may be older may relate to using wood and charcoal and coal and kerosene to cook in the home sometimes, or perhaps an outdoor kitchen, right? A lot of those things may turn out to be carcinogenics or sometimes just irritants. But as we move towards a more, sort of more upper income, more sort of expanded or middle class, recognize that most individuals today actually don't use any of those things, and we use more natural gas, electricity, or for cooking. So that is less of a risk factor today than it was perhaps, let's say, 25, 30 years ago. Again, I'm going to bring this slide back up, and I don't want to be, it's not my goal to be morbid, but death is in fact inevitable, right? But chronic diseases can be prevented. And this is why we're here, and this is why it's such a big deal. This is why Sister Kins and the rest of the folks at the Ministry of Health are taking their time out to actually speak to you about this, because there are things that can be done to either prevent those diseases, to either delay their onset, or to actually delay the onset of complications from those diseases. So what can you as a patient do? If you're a patient, or if you're someone living with a patient with those diseases, or what can you as the individual do, right? You may not be a patient yet, you may not suffer from any one of those diseases, but if you are here with us, here are some of the things you can do immediately. For example, if you are smoking, you can stop smoking. If you have friends or family members who stop smoking, then you can encourage them to actually reduce, if not eliminate, the habit, and get the help that is required to do so. Dust control. That sometimes becomes problematic. I see that the number of roads in St. Kitts are still not paved, and therefore a lot of times there are a lot of dust in some of the neighborhoods that you may live in, and that may actually be a trigger for asthma and for other type of respiratory conditions like allergic rhinitis. Improve ventilation. As we review our building codes and we try to create more energy efficient homes, how air circulates throughout our homes is an important thing. So improve ventilation in our homes, in our kitchens, in our rooms, and so on throughout is also important. Reducing pollution, how we dispose of certain garbage, how we dispose of aerosols. Those things are extremely important as well. And also regular exercise is also an important factor, not only as from weight reduction, but also breathing exercises. Swimmers, for example, you typically have an increased lung capacity. So swimming is very helpful for the individual who wants to increase or maintain some degree of lung capacity. What can educators, like people like myself and individuals like Sister Kins, what do we need to be doing right now? And well, we need to actually become more active in terms of our primary prevention and health promotion. And this is one of the activities that actually get towards that. We need to move from the management of acute disorders as medical practitioners to prevention of acute exacerbations. I still see asthmatic patients who are diagnosed with asthma but are carrying nothing but a rescue inhaler, right, which is the salbutamol or the Ventolin. We need to look into prevention, which asthma is also an inflammatory condition, and therefore anti-inflammatory meds in the form of inhaled corticosteroids are an important part of the management of asthma, right? Health educations with a focus that is redirected from the management of acute disease to chronic disease management. That's also important. And we also need to do some more research. So we need to prioritize some of our resource allocation to do research within our own community, because the way in which diseases affect us in St. Kitts is different to perhaps a neighboring island, or different to a more developed country that actually has is more heavily industrialized. Because we don't have industries here. So if we do have a situation where we have respiratory conditions, a bit of research, and I see Lake and Health and Wellness is here on the call, and that's one of the groups that I really have a lot of time for, and I really give a lot of credit, because they have been doing a lot of work in terms of doing some small research and some focus groups together to help us get the type of statistics that helps to inform on the policy that is adopted. Government and institutions, continued education, streamlining education of healthcare professionals. If you're a medical doctor, if you're a medical practitioner, if you're a nurse, continued education is such an important part of your career. Things change, diseases change, new medications come on the market, new ways of management, new insights from research come out, and it's important that we are kept up to date with information, so that we can always ensure that our patients are getting the best treatment. Targeted campaigns at both healthcare professionals and patients, something like this as well, does a fantastic job at this by ensuring that you level the playing field for everyone to receive information at the same time. Patient education, financial incentives or penalties. Right now it's being discussed, the tax on sweet and sugary beverages, right? And then at a governmental level, laws and regulations, again, about smoking, restrictions on smoking indoors, restrictions on smoking in certain restaurants, in certain areas, right? Ensuring that we have no smoking zones throughout the country. Tax and price interventions, of course, on SSBs, and of course, things like cigarettes and tobacco, right? Advocacy and community-based interventions, school-based interventions, workplace interventions is important. It's one of the things that we discussed with the Chamber of Commerce, to work together towards developing occupational safety and health protocols, so that those things can be monitored at the workplace level. It doesn't mean that everyone has to hire an environmental health and safety officer, but those things should be on the radar of individuals who are employing individuals to work in the companies. Screening, clinical prevention, disease management, rehabilitation, and palliative care are all things that we should be looking at, revisiting our approaches, and exploring whether there are any changes that is required. So what is the effect of
Thank you so much, Dr. Pierre. Thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative. The recommendations are some that we can look into in order to assist persons living with respiratory illnesses. And we just want to thank you for joining us for this afternoon session. Thank you for your overview on asthma and other respiratory conditions. As we said before, there is much work to be done, and no action is too small, no voice is insignificant in combating non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases are what we are speaking about today, what we call NCDs, right? Also, just to remind us, this forum forms part of the 30th anniversary of independence for the Federation. So just want to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll move right along to our next speaker, who is Dr. Caroline Lawrence, and she will share with us cardiovascular conditions. Dr. Lawrence, thank you for joining us.
Oh, hi, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me. And I see time Are you seeing me?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. All right. So my emphasis or focus is on cardiovascular diseases. So let us begin. All right, so cardiovascular diseases. I know some of us might be not too familiar with what that word actually means, cardiovascular. So cardio, section of the word, it refers to of the heart, things that happen of the heart, in the heart. Vascular is referring to the blood vessels, the main ones being the arteries and veins. So the heart's main job is to deliver blood to the body. Its job is to deliver blood to the body, supplying the body with its oxygen and nutrition to function. So heart failure is that the heart fails at its job to do this delivery. Of course, the heart, when it fails, does not stop working. We're not talking about absence of heartbeat, which is something else. Heart failure, it doesn't do the job properly. So now the tissues don't get all the blood, all the nutrients, all the oxygen to survive. Without a doubt, there are many different types of cardiovascular diseases. So I thought for this 10 minutes that it would be really hard for me to touch on each one. So I said, let's look at the most common cause of death related to cardiovascular diseases, and cardiovascular diseases in particular, heart attacks, would be the leading cause of death worldwide. A heart attack is that artery that feeds a particular section of the heart gets blocked. Remember, we said that the heart is to deliver blood to the body, and the heart itself delivers blood to itself too, through these arteries. So if this artery gets blocked, then that section of the heart that was dependent on the blood to feed it no longer gets the blood, so that section of the heart begins to die. And that is what constitutes a heart attack. What does a heart attack look like? So we have our schematic here. The red vessel is what is delivering the blood. And I'm going to draw where we should see this is the space, this is where I'm putting the X. This is the space through which blood is to flow. And in this, the one that I've just highlighted, this is a normal sized vessel. With the interior, the pipe is wide open. The space available for blood to flow is normal. Over time, we see this space getting smaller and smaller as a heart attack, as the vessel gets more and more diseased. And the ultimate, well, we haven't reached the ultimate yet, but the space then gets smaller and smaller, less space for blood to flow, less space for blood to flow. And the ultimate is that vessel getting completely blocked. And a completely blocked vessel would then give us the heart attack. All right, so here we see this picture schematic of the heart. And the blood vessels would be the red things running on the outside, the arteries, feeding the heart itself. A heart attack, as I keep saying, is that vessel gets blocked. So now we see the gray area of the heart muscle that was dependent on that blood supply through those coronary arteries. And a heart attack is that vessel gets completely blocked or occluded. So the gray area stops getting the blood it needs. And there we have damage being done. And if we don't open up that blood vessel, that area of the heart completely dies. And we get loss of heart function in that section of the heart. What are the symptoms of a heart attack? Most of us are quite familiar with this. It's typically chest pain. It's described as the most severe pain the person is ever going to say that they've ever experienced. It's severe, center of the chest, pressing, sometimes it's squeezing, sometimes it's burning. And so some of us on this side of the physician, the diagnosis fence, sometimes when we get the person presenting with chest pain, not even just the physicians, the patients too. Everybody knows chest pain could be heart disease, could be a heart attack. Sometimes we get fooled because we say it's burning chest pain, or this can't be heart disease, this is heartburn, acid reflux. But nope, sometimes it is a presentation of heart attack. Typically, the heart attack chest pain lasts longer than 30 minutes. It can stay in the center or more to the left. Sometimes it radiates, the pain radiates up to the left shoulder and down the left arm. Sometimes it radiates up the left side of the neck. Sometimes they get this sense of impending doom. This is so bad, and no, I'm not going to make it. I'm sweating a lot. As I said, they describe it as the most severe pain they've ever had. That's a typical presentation. Some have atypical. So of course, to muddy the water, some of us, particularly people with diabetes and the older population, might not have the classic typical chest pain presentation. We may have some, it's just nebulous, a little pain, no big deal. And sometimes you don't even have any pain at all. Again, often with people with diabetes, they may have silent heart attacks. So instead of the chest pain, they may have subtle presentations like fainting or tiredness, weakness. And then of course, there's that 20% who present with sudden death. Their heart attack takes out so much of the heart muscle that they just can't live. Usually it's within the first hour after the vessel is occluded, and it is sometimes that it just takes out so much muscle, or the heart attack triggers a lethal heart rhythm called ventricular fibrillation, which if you don't fix within the first 5 minutes, the person dies. So though that's actually a way of a heart attack presenting sudden death. So then, knowing all this stuff, again, related to the purpose we are here, what can we do to prevent the heart attacks? And that is about identifying who is at risk for getting heart attacks. Dr. Frank already mentioned that we have our modifiable versus non-modifiable risk factors. And the big deal with finding out these risk factors is to identify who is at risk clearly. Who then can we step in, change outcome, change these risk factors? So you step in to modify those risk factors that you can change. Of course, good to recognize the fixed ones, the non-modifiable. Increasing age, as we get older, we all at risk for getting a heart attack. A man increasing age, a man with a family history of somebody in his family already having a heart attack, has an increased risk. I think he can't change. Some races are more at risk. The Black race, the Latina race is more at risk than, say, the Caucasian race. We premenopausal women, which I still can identify. Anyway, so we still have, under the age of menopause, or under not getting menopause, we have somewhat of a protection, but this protection swiftly disappears after we go into menopause. So this page is important to know who is at risk with those risk factors we cannot change. Therefore, let's find those risk factors that we can change in those with the non-modifiable and change them. So again, mentioned before, the modifiable risk factors include hypertension, uncontrolled blood pressure, high cholesterol, uncontrolled diabetes, obesity, physical inactivity, cigarette smoking, and a lot of mental stress, which we're all under right now. So big deal again, recognize who has the non-modifiable risk factors, then intervene with who has the modifiable ones and attack them aggressively. Their modifiable risk factors need to be aggressively controlled. Identify and aggressively control. Get that blood pressure down to target.
And it's remaining.
There. Hello? Yeah, get that pressure down.
Remaining.
Thanks. Get that pressure and remain it. Get it down and remain it. Keep it down. Get the sugar down and keep it down. Get the blood pressure down and keep it down. Most times, these are with prescription medications, and we do still have those non-prescription ways, which are still very important. The lifestyle changes with regular exercise, trying to get to as close as the ideal body weight as possible. and eat a very mixed diet, rich in fresh fruits and vegetables. A lot that is actually achievable, even here in St. Kitts Nevis, to decrease the risk then of succumbing to a heart attack. So thank you for listening. Thanks for staying.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lawrence. And I know some persons have learned something in looking at how the heart changes when a person is having a heart attack, and what symptoms to look out for, what changes occur while someone might be experiencing a heart attack. As I've said before, no action is too small, and the information shared this afternoon can help someone, or help someone to help someone, because it's all of us that gets affected by NCDs. Our next speaker for this afternoon is Dr. Marissa Grant, and she will be presenting to us on cancers. Dr. Grant?
Good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. So I have the task of speaking in about 7 minutes or so on the topic of cancer. Cancer, very simply put, is a group of over 200 different illnesses, quite heterogeneous in terms of their origin. In other words, they differ quite significantly from one to the other, although they also too have what would be considered very common factors amongst most of them. So we would take a situation, or rather look at the situation worldwide. Worldwide, there is an estimated, in the year of 2020, there was an estimated 19.3 million new cancer cases, which were recorded, and almost 10 million cancer deaths. Female breast cancer has surpassed lung cancer as the most commonly diagnosed cancer, with what is an estimated 2.3 million cases, million new cases. And this was followed by lung, colorectal, prostate, and stomach cancers. Lung cancer, however, remained the leading cause of cancer death, with an estimated 1.8 million deaths. And this was followed by colorectal cancer, liver cancer, stomach cancer, and again, female breast cancer. The overall incidence was from 2 to 3-fold higher in transition countries compared to transitioning countries amongst both sexes, with the exemption of what would have been breast and cervical cancers as it pertained to the mortality rate, where it is that it was found that these particular cancers had higher death rates in what would have been the transitioning countries versus the transitioned countries. The global cancer burden is expected to be 28.4 million cases by the year of 2040, which is a 47% rise from 2020. So by what is 2040, then essentially the cancer cases worldwide are expected to be doubled. According to the estimates from the World Health Organization in 2019, cancer is the first or second leading cause of death before the age of 70 in 112 out of 183 countries. And it ranks third or fourth in an additional 23 countries. So needless to say, cancer is quite a problem worldwide. If we take a look a bit closer to the Caribbean, then we would notice that prostate cancer is the single most frequent occurring cancer within the region, with what is an estimated 21,380 cases. This is followed by breast, followed by colorectal cancer, cancer of the lung, and then cancer of the stomach. And then we have the other cancers which are bundled together, which then account for what would be 44.5% of the cases. Here we would have the hematological cases and so forth, amongst others. As it pertains to age, it is notable to point out that cancer is an illness that spans across just about every aspect of life, every age rather, sorry. It is an illness that is seen from the tiniest of tiny in terms of babies and extends to what would be our elderly patients. However, cancers vary in terms of their frequency as it pertains to incidence according to the age. So we have some cancers that we see more notably so in younger patients, and we have those that we see in a more moderately aged patient, and then we have those that we see in what would be the elder patient in terms of frequency. If we look again at the Caribbean, we had in what was the year of 2020, over 43,532,374 cancer cases. Sorry, this is the total population given for that year for 2020. And there were 113,280 cases that were diagnosed during that time period, 113,280 cases, with a number of deaths recorded at 65,954. And when we look at what would have been the prevalent cases over a 5-year period, so in other words, patients that would have been diagnosed within the Caribbean over that 5-year span who are still living with cancer, they would have been diagnosed up to 5 years ago, then we have an active 280,934 cases. When we come a bit closer in terms of home, then we have what would be the top 5 cancers which would have been recorded throughout the years of 2013 to 2017 for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Prostate cancer is most notable as being the number 1 in terms of incidence. This is followed by breast cancer, cervical cancer at 3rd, colorectal cancer, and skin cancer comes in at 5th. And then we break it down a bit more specifically between the 2 islands, St. Kitts and Nevis. But nonetheless, what we can see is that the data is, again, very similarly so reflected amongst rather with its distribution amongst both islands. So I needed to touch a bit on what would be the risk factors. And as my very able colleagues before me would have mentioned, these factors, they're often classified into what would be modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. For the purpose of this presentation, we will look at what would be the modifiable factors. So in other words, the things that we can actually change. And here we have cigarette smoking, be it first-hand smoking or second-hand smoke exposure, excess of body weight, drinking alcohol, particularly drinking more than 30 grams of alcohol daily. But we do know that beers, for example, a beer has much over 30 grams of alcohol. So if you're doing that daily, then this is obviously an issue. Eating red and processed meat, a diet that is low in fruits, vegetables, dietary fiber, and dietary calcium, physical inactivity, UV radiation, be it as a result of sunlight or as a result of what would be indoor tanning. And then we also have what we consider 6 cancer-associated infections, be it the H. pylori, hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C, HPV, human herpes virus type 8, and HIV. It's also important to point out that 4 in 10 cancers or cancer deaths are related to what would be modifiable cancer, or rather modifiable risk factors. So in other words, things that we can actually change. I would like to, however, to emphasize on the importance of striking a balance, because there are what would be considered factors that will influence one particular cancer, but then at the same time, they may be what could be factors to prevent another type of cancer. And this is important, particularly when it comes to the diet. It's not about completely excluding what would be, for example, the red meat and the fat altogether, although we definitely want to decrease this altogether, and it greatly reduces the risk of many cancers. But then this is also to a diet that would increase the risk for what would be cancer of the stomach in particular. As it pertains to treatment varies significantly from one cancer to the next, and treatment also varies according to the stage of the cancer and the what would be to the individual's general health. What might be a younger patient, they may be able to do a particular type of treatment that we may not necessarily explore in what would be an older patient, for example, or a patient who might not have the same rigor in respect to what is overall general health. Treatment can also vary too, as it would pertain to what would be the patient's personal preference. And again, too, this is something that would be explained to the patient, because the patient's preference may not necessarily be the ideal layout in respect to treatment, but nonetheless, the patient has to be a part of the decision making. And so then this is something that is definitely considered, explored, and is also encouraged too when we look at what would be the treatment options. If I were to put it in a bundle treatment, we look at surgery. And again, not every type of cancer would necessarily be related to all treatment measures. So this is just basically a summary of some of the modalities that are used as a form of treatment to cancer. So we do surgery, for example, chemotherapy, there's targeted therapy, immunotherapy, and radiation as well. And so that is my very brief presentation of cancer in about 7 minutes, I think. Nurse Keynes, I hope that that was okay for you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grant. And yes, it was. Thank you so much. You have compact a lot in a very short time, and I truly appreciate that. Thank you so, so much for your presentation, for your overview. Okay, moving right along. We'll now hear from Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian Jr., who will present to us on diabetes, one of our #1 NCDs in the Federation. Dr. Sebastian.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. All right, am I sharing my screen? Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
We are seeing the screen, but not the presentation as yet.
Not the presentation yet. I think I'm on somebody else's screen.
Grant? Dr. Grant, can you stop sharing your screen?
I think someone's sharing, yeah.
Doctor, okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Give me 1 moment, sorry. Hello, can everyone see now or no?
No, we're not seeing anything as yet.
How about now? Can you see?
Okay, you started. Yes, we are seeing now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you. All right.
So I was tasked with presenting about one of the most common medical diseases that we have worldwide, and especially here in the Federation. So living with diabetes mellitus, or diabetes, or high blood sugar, or sugar, as we know it here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So approximately 463 million people in the world actually lives with diabetes. So that's roughly 6.8% of the world's population. So it's a very common disease to live with. So in today, I really want everyone to get these 5 points on what is diabetes, how does it work, how it affects you, benefits and challenges versus early versus late diagnosis, how to prevent the complications of diabetes, and the treatment options available. So what is diabetes? So diabetes happens when your body isn't able to take your sugar into the cells and use it for energy. Therefore, it builds up in your blood. So that's how you get high blood sugar. So the body usually breaks down your carbohydrates when you eat it and changes it into sugar and is then absorbed into the blood. Sugar is used as energy for your body and needs to be taken into the cells from the blood. So they do it by your body does it by using a hormone called insulin, which is made in the pancreas. So it is the key for glucose to get into your cells. So if you have diabetes, it's either your pancreas doesn't make the insulin or enough of insulin, or your pancreas makes insulin, but your cells don't respond to it as normally. And if your cells don't respond to it, that means you can't get the blood sugar into your cells. So this is a nice diagram here showing the pancreas. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Here's the insulin here, and here's the little sugar cubes and the insulin bringing it inside to the cell. So that's just a nice, easy diagram that everyone can understand. So I'm focusing on two types of diabetes, even though there are some rare versions of it. We all know type 1, or called insulin-dependent diabetes. Is an autoimmune disease, meaning your body actually attacks itself. And in this case, the insulin-producing cells of your pancreas are destroyed. And if they're destroyed, they can't produce the insulin. Therefore, the insulin can't bring the sugar into your cells. It's usually diagnosed in children and young adults, but it can actually develop at any age. Then you have the type 2 diabetes, is when your body doesn't respond to insulin as it should, and later often doesn't make enough insulin. So after a while, your body doesn't make enough insulin if you have type 2 diabetes. So what are the risk factors for diabetes? So some non-modifiable risk factors. I think we've gone over a couple of them on the previous presentations. So non-modifiable: family history or genetics, especially in type 1, race, ethnicity, your age, your sex, which are non-modifiable, so you can't change these. Modifiable ones are environmental factors, weight, your diet, your activity level, your levels of cholesterol, your blood pressure, smoking and alcohol. I think we've touched on smoking and alcohol in a few of the other previous slides. So clearly these are some of the most important risk factors to a number of different diseases, not just diabetes. So how it impacts you if you're a diabetic. So if you're a diabetic, or if you're not sure if you are diabetic, these are some symptoms that you can actually see. Increased thirst, especially if you're not controlled. Increased thirst, weakness, a tired feeling, blurred vision, numbness or tingling in the hands or feet, slow healing sores or cuts, because you need a functioning immune system to properly heal sores and cuts. And your blood sugar level affects your immune system. Frequent urination, frequent unexplained infections, erectile dysfunction, and decreased muscle strength. Impact of diabetes on an individual, so the complications. So cardiovascular issues. So diabetes is directly linked to cardiovascular issues because it can damage the blood vessels, cause inflammation and those type of things. Nerve damage, kidney damage, eye damage, foot damage, skin infections, as I mentioned before, erectile dysfunction, hearing loss. It can lead to depression, dementia, and even dental problems. So impact of diabetes on an individual. So we also just tend to look at the complications of things, but then there's the lifestyle changes that patients have to make. So they have to change their diet. So avoiding high sugary foods, high in starchy foods, those type of things. So they have to decrease that amount. They have to learn how to monitor their own glucose levels every day. Perhaps they never exercised before, so they have to implement a new routine into their life. administering your own medication, especially diabetics who use insulin. So they have to learn how to actually administer that medication for themselves. Yes, some people have family members that do it, but what would you do if your family member is not around? So these are certain things that individuals have to overcome. And some people are afraid of needles. So benefits of early versus late diagnosis. So obviously, early diagnosis prevents complications and permanent damage to your organs. Diabetes affects every organ system in your body. 2, it is easier to implement a more gradual change in your lifestyle if it's detected earlier rather than an abrupt change if it's detected later. 3, if detected earlier, less likely to require more or frequent doses of medication. And 4, it's financially better to have it detected earlier. That means you would have less complications, possibly less diseases that develop or problems that develop, meaning a lower medical bill. To prevent these complications, take your diabetes medication as prescribed by your doctor. Take all your medications to treat other illnesses because they may come to fruition because there might be risk factors from diabetes themselves. Monitor your blood sugar closely. Follow a healthy diet, such as, example, a Mediterranean or a DASH diet. And most importantly, do not skip meals. Exercise regularly, at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Lose weight if you are overweight. Keep yourself well hydrated. Water is always the best choice. Quit smoking if you do smoke. And also see a doctor regularly to monitor your diabetes and to look out for any complications that the diabetes can cause. So treatment options available. So diabetes has so many different types of drugs available. I think the FDA approved over 60 different drugs for diabetes. So instead of listing them all, I'm just going to be really general with this part. So type 1 diabetes is insulin every day. Obviously, because your pancreas no longer makes insulin. And obviously the lifestyle changes that we've mentioned before, change in diet, exercise, etc. Then you have type 2 diabetes, so you have the diabetic medication. Everyone's familiar with metformin. I'm pretty sure in St. Kitts and Nevis. Insulin, again, is a possibility because remember, as you progress in years in the diabetes, your ability to produce insulin decrease. So there's different forms: rapid, short, intermediate, and long-acting insulin. And that combination, you and your doctor will be able to come up with the right combination for you. Lifestyle changes again. And there's actually surgery in some special instances. Bariatric surgery has shown to improve glucose levels in diabetics and can actually lead to remission. And remission is not a cure, but they found that, I believe, in over 70% of people who have done bariatric surgery, if they are candidate for it, have shown some form of remission. Pancreatic transplant, because the pancreas is where you produce your insulin.
2 minutes remaining.
And so intervention on a large scale. So we can't just look at the small scale. So government initiatives should include advocacy, supporting national associations and non-government organizations, promoting the economic case for prevention, community support, providing education in schools regarding nutrition and physical activity, promoting opportunities for physical activity through urban design, for example, cycling and walking pathways, fiscal and legislative, examining food pricing, labeling and advertising, enforcing environmental and infrastructure regulation, engagement of private sector, promoting health in the workplace, ensuring healthy food policies in the food industry, and media communication, improving level of knowledge and motivation of the population via press, TV, and radio. So basically what we're doing here right now. And that's it, the end. I hope I made it in time.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. for your presentation on diabetes. And as you can see, it affects all walks, all across the lifespan, not just the older adults, but also the children all as well. Thank you again, Dr. Sebastian, for your presentation.
Thank you for having me.
We'll now move on to a condition that might seem new to some, but has existed for a while. And these are our autoimmune conditions. And we'll ask Dr. Babu, a medical specialist, to give us some more information about autoimmune conditions. Dr. Babu?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I am asked to speak about the autoimmune disease. You hear me? Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, yes.
We are hearing you.
Okay, the topic for today is non-communicable disease. So the non-communicable disease is a vast subject. It's a big one. So I think some of the main topics have been discussed already. And autoimmune disease is one of them, including the non-communicable disease. So the non-communicable disease, generally to talk about, it is a chronic condition. It tends to last longer, and it is due to it could be due to the environment, the lifestyle, diet, abuses like tobacco abuse, alcohol. So all this causes this non-communicable disease, which could be avoided, prevented, if every individual knows what he has to do it. Okay, now coming about the autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is a condition where your immune system is overactive and attacks your own body cells and organs, thinking that it is a foreign body. Usually immune system, they get active, overactive, when they see a foreign substance, just like a bacteria or a virus, and they produce antibodies. But in an autoimmune disease, the immune system produces antibodies against your own cells and organs. So this could be classified into two. It could be a systemic or organ-specific autoimmune disease. So this autoimmune, there's no specific trigger or a cause for this autoimmune disease. So we really don't know exactly what causes it. So, but in general, it could be environmental factor. It could be your lifestyle factors. It could be a stress, simple stress can cause the autoimmune disease. In general, what specialists advise is to keep stress-free, eating a healthy diet, keeping away from abuses like alcohol abuse, tobacco abuse, drugs, could prevent all these conditions, autoimmune conditions. To name few, like rheumatoid arthritis is itself an autoimmune condition. Diabetes type 1 is an autoimmune condition. So like this, we have more than 100 autoimmune diseases. There's no permanent cure for this, but it is manageable. Coming early, we can prevent the organ damage. But the other non-communicable diseases, which was already discussed by other speakers, like the cardiovascular, asthma, these are preventable, totally preventable. Now, triggers, we exactly don't know what is the exact triggers. We have seen some genetic predisposition. And most of the environmental conditions triggers it. Dust, smoke, pesticides also triggers. And these days, even the diet, fish is one of the common triggers we have seen recently. So eating healthy, exercising regularly, avoiding all abuses could prevent the autoimmune condition and the other non-communicable diseases. Diagnosing the autoimmune disease is not very simple because the symptoms for the autoimmune disease, also the other diseases also have the same similar symptoms. So diagnosing to autoimmune diseases, one single test doesn't give the diagnosis. So there are a couple of tests, you rule it out and then go to specific markers, or sometimes even biopsy is required. So diagnosing an autoimmune condition is not simple and easy. So it takes time. So the patient should know when to approach the doctor. Simple symptoms, they might take over-the-counter medications, but that may not help them out. Coming to the non-communicable disease itself, like the statistics, they said 41 million people die globally. But then we are not talking much about this non-communicable disease at all. COVID caused only 1.8 million last year death, but we are talking much about it. So you can see the difference. Where is 41 million and where is 1.8 million? Okay, non-communicable disease, how we can prevent it is basically educating the community, educating the public, like what we are doing right now. That should help in avoiding the non-communicable disease. There's no specific treatment for this autoimmune conditions. It's basically we use immunosuppressive medications, but then symptomatic management really helps. Okay, immunosuppressive we use only as a end stage, final management. In general, what I would like to say is for all public, non-communicable disease is totally preventable. So watch what you eat. More vegetables and fruits is preferred than the animal products. Try to avoid processed food. Limit your alcohol. I'm not saying no alcohol. Limit it. No smoking. Bit of exercise. I'm not asking to go to the gym and do heavy weightlifting. Bit of exercise or gentle walking 10 minutes a day. That should help you to keep healthy. Thank you. Ms. Keynes, hope
Thank you very
I
much,
answered most
Dr.
of it.
Babu.
Yes.
Okay, can you give an idea of what diseases are classified as autoimmune conditions?
There are quite a number of conditions. Like for our common people, I think lupus they know as a autoimmune, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes. So we have some irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease. So there are so many other things which the general public may not be aware. So I am talking in my language was more to address the general public. I don't want to talk as a professional. That's why I didn't use any medical terms as well. Okay, so simple thing, rheumatoid arthritis, I told you, that everybody knows. Lupus, most of them know.
Yes.
They are all included in the autoimmune condition.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And we have now come to the end of segment 1. So we heard from the experts. And we had persons had the opportunity, you could have typed your questions to ask the experts about the different disease conditions they have spoke about. Not seeing any questions in the chat. So I'll give you 2 minutes. If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat and we can discuss, have the different specialists give their feedback. There was a lot of information shared. And I just want to thank our 5 specialists for being part of this informative seminar. It is indeed timely. Although we know we are in a pandemic, we can't take our eyes off of the non-communicable diseases. So I'm not seeing any questions. So I can take it that I can continue. And with me to assist me this afternoon in this area, I have with me a counselor from the Sadler Secondary School who is going to assist me in sharing, helping persons who are living with these conditions to share their experiences. She is an educator. Okay, I see one question. Can COVID-19 or the vaccine cause some of these diseases to manifest more? Is there a specialist that wants to answer that question?
Hi.
Question?
Hi. So funny enough, you asked that question. I was actually reading an article where COVID-19 can cause diabetes to manifest more. I've actually seen 2 cases where 2 individuals have developed diabetes while they had COVID-19 here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think it has to do with the inflammation of the pancreas and therefore causing a disruption in production of insulin, and therefore the patients become diabetic. But there's still more studies to be done to see if that's actually true. Well, I don't think the vaccine does any of that. So, but the COVID-19 infection, they've actually seen that.
Thank you, Dr. Siheli. Okay, so we're moving along. We will now have join with us Ms. Evelyn Huggins-Forbes, and she will do the introduction for our next segment with our speakers who will be sharing their life experience living with NCDs. Ms. Forbes?
Good afternoon, everyone. So we've just heard from the first set of panelists who gave us some insight as to how these NCDs, how they are developed, how they affect the body, how they work. And we also got an overview of the incidences globally and St. Kitts Nevis. So now we get the opportunity to hear from persons who have been directly affected by some of these non-communicable diseases. So without further ado, I will introduce the first panelist for segment 2. And allow me to introduce Tracy and Cindy, and these are persons who are going to share their experience with cancers. So Tracy and Cindy, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Cindy Freeman and I'm a cancer survivor.
And my name is Tracy Paris and I am a family member of cancer survivors and cancer, people who have passed with cancer. So, Cindy.
What am I supposed to say?
What cancer you got?
In 2009, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. I guess that was an experience. You never thought that, that these things could happen to you. You try to live right and eat right and exercise and do all these kind of things, and you still end up with it, but you know, thank God that is not a death sentence anymore, as people would, you know, have it back in the days that, you know, oh, you have cancer, you're gonna die. It's not like that. It's as long as you catch it early, which I did, mine was a stage 2. You catch it early. I'm not saying that is something easy, something that, you know, it was painful as a mother and a wife. You know, my kids I have 3 children. My oldest was 14. My youngest was about 5. Having to leave them, go to get treatment, because, you know, we didn't have treatment here, so I had to go to Cuba. And at the same time, my dad also was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So that was like a double whammy for me, having to deal with my own issues and then having to deal with my dad not being here to give him the support that I wanted to give him, you know. But having cancer, you really need the support from families and friends. And my parents, well, my mom and my brothers and my sisters, them pitched in to help while I was away with my kids. So that was a kind of a relief, knowing that they're gonna be okay and knowing that, you know, they'll be safe and continue with their schoolworks and so on and so on. I've had a lot of friends also who have passed. Lee Paris Cambridge, who is the founder of Pink Lily, she was also one of my source of strength. You know, before I left, she was explaining to me what is chemo and what to expect when you get chemo and, you know, stuff like that. So she was a big help, along with Tracy and the Pink Lily family. So, but she's, God rest her soul, you know, she's gone. But she was a fighter. She fought very hard. She didn't give up, and she encouraged other people who have cancer also to not to give up, you know, fight for it. And I am here 11 years after, just to see that anybody can survive from this thing. I exercise, I change my diet, I do more exercise, I cut down on stuff that I used to eat that I don't eat anymore, you know, get more active in activities, helping other people who are going through the same thing. You know, if I can save, just talking to somebody, save somebody's life, that's a blessing for me, you know, that's a plus. And even if I had lived one day over the time that I was diagnosed, that would have been, that is one day, you know, one day more to be with your friends and family than, you know, just giving up and say, oh, I'm gonna die and stuff like that. So we have to fight. We can't give up. We can't throw in the towels, you know, stuff like that. We have to learn to tell people, because some people don't want people to know. You have to talk to somebody about it. Depression, it makes you go into depression, it makes you do, you know, a lot of things. And when you're depressed, it makes the disease season even more worse than it is. Just thinking about it, it can kill you faster than the actual cancer. So we have to learn to look out for one another and be our brother's keeper, you know, help somebody who needs help. And that is what Pink Lily is really all about, helping people who needs help. We don't have money like that, but we do what we can do to, you know, pay for a treatment or pay for a visit to a doctor or something. So that's just me. I'll turn over to Trace now. She'll tell you more about Pink Lily.
For me, I don't have cancer, but both my mom and Lee were diagnosed 2 weeks apart. We didn't have any, going back, we didn't have any family history. It was a shock because they were in England at the time I was here in Nevis. And straight away when I heard the word cancer, I thought they were, you know, look sick, you know, just look poorly, but I had to go to England and see them. And the spirit that my sister had, she never once let it crush her. She never once let it defeat her. Not her mind, not her spirit. And that's why she chose, rather than dwell on it, that's when she decided that we needed something, support in the Federation. So for me, watching both my sister and my mom with cancer was hard, you know, but we didn't make light of it, but we chose to live life to the fullest with each other, with our children, grandchildren, and we didn't let it determine how we would get through the day. It just became a norm, so to speak. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people have come forward since my sister came forward and shared her story and her journey. But unfortunately, there's still people out there, they feel ashamed. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not something that they brought on themselves. But, you know, I don't know if it's the society that we live in, that people feel, you know, that I don't know. I always say to a person, if you find out someone you know have cancer, the worst thing you could do to them is treat them differently. They have to deal with it themselves. So, you know, it's difficult. But as a family, like Cindy said, when you have family and you have friends and you have people there to support you, it means so much. It means so much. It gives you the strength to fight. And that's what we are doing now. That since my sister passed, 2019, that's what we decided. We didn't decide. We have to keep her good works going, and it just made us more determined to be there for other people, to help them, help their families. So that's where I come in, how the families feel, how the mothers feel, how the children feel. It doesn't affect just the patient. And what I find over the years, the patient seems to deal with it better than the family members. It's like they get technical, they know all the medical terms, it takes over their life in a kind of positive way, so to speak, as they know what's going on. They want to know what's going on with their bodies. But as a family member, it's hard. It's hard. It's difficult. But you have to keep the strength. You have to keep your faith. You have to keep your strength. You have to keep those closest to you. And you just have to do what you can to share your journey and share your feelings and just be there as a support system. It's important. It's important. So, and that's what me and Cindy are here to continue. To continue.
All right, thank you so much.
Started. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Cindy, for sharing your story, your journey. It's inspiring, and I'm sure the listeners, the audience, can share some of the tips you have shared today with persons that they know who are living with either one of the non-communicable diseases that we've learned about so far during this seminar. We'll now move into the other panelists for this segment. And I now introduce Ms. Shandy Mills. Please unmute your mic, Shandy, and share your experience with diabetes. Shandy.
Good afternoon to everyone. You hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I am Shandy Mills, and I have diabetes for 28 years now. And it ain't bother me. I still live in a happy life. I end up with amputation 2017. And I'm still going on with my life. I'm still going on with my life. It ain't stop me. It only slow me down. So even though you have, as old people say, you have one leg, you could still move around, live the same normal life, be a happy person. Because I go to church and everything on Sunday, I do all my chores and everything for myself, even though I have one leg and I am a diabetic. So it only slow me down, but it ain't stop me at all, at all, at all. So, and I usually go and speak to other people who have diabetes. It have a lady just call me, she mentor. She had diabetic and she just called me. She said, man, nothing about diabetes, but she gonna call me and she gonna talk to me and everything. I will give a little advice that I know and everything. So you could still live a happy life, a normal life, even though you are diabetic, but just that we have to eat right and do our exercise and everything. Take our medication, and we're gonna live a longer and a happy life. So that is my little 2-pence piece. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shandi, for those encouraging words. I do commend you and Tracy and Cindy so far for sharing your experiences. So we'll now move into the final panelist for this segment. And this is an individual who will share her experience living with lupus. So I invite Mrs. Victorine Hanley to share.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So it started out, I had a DVT. I was experiencing swollen joints, muscular pains, fevers. I was hospitalized at the time. And then later on, I had a PE. And then my physician decided to send me for several blood tests. And that is when we realized that I had lupus. So I've been living with lupus for about 10 years now. Later on, I was diagnosed with mixed connective tissue disease. So I have Raynaud's and Sjögren's disease. Raynaud's, my fingers would turn blue, really, really blue at times, especially when I go in a cold environment. And that would be like in the cold area, like in Rams in the supermarket, that would like turn my fingers blue. It would cause me to have joint pains. And the Sjögren, I would experience dry mouth, really bad dry eyes. I would have to go and check my eyes every 6 months. Also, I have to take moisturizers most of the time for my throat, my mouth, and my eyes. Well, I must say, I'm married with 2 healthy children, and they are now adults. So coping with lupus, it is sometimes a challenge living with lupus, especially on days when there are flares. I would experience joint stiffness and pains, fatigue and extreme tiredness. There are days when I feel like I just really, really can't move. There are days when I can't even function to go to work. I just have to stay in and work. And there are times when I will get depressed. And the other day, well, some years back, when I realized that I live in a tropical island, and I realized I can't stand the sunlight anymore. My skin began to get swollen. I started getting like little wales on my skin. I experienced a flare-up. I got joint pains, I got fever, and that hit me, and I started crying. And I said, I live in a tropical country and I can't go outside for more than 10, 15 minutes in the sunlight. It causes my body to flare up and flare up really, really bad. So I tried my best to avoid too much sun. I would still try to go outside to get a little vitamin D, but not to stay in it too long. And some people would approach me and said, but you don't look like you're sick. Look at your face, you don't look like you're sick. It's on the inside, like your body just feel like it's just tearing you down at times. But I will usually tell them God's grace and mercy is what keeps me going. I'm a Christian, and the times when I feel depressed, I will turn to God for his grace and his mercy. That is what keeps me going most of the time. It's important for us to have friends and family support, and I am grateful for my friends and my family. especially my family, it helps me to function on a day-to-day basis, because when I said there are days when I'm not able to move and function and move about, they are real. Those days are for real. And I thank God for my family. I thank God for my praying family as well. But I must say this, for the past year, I have changed my diet to plant-based. And I've recognized that most of my joint pains have less. I don't get flare up as I used to get. I am still taking my prescribed meds, because that is important to take my medication. Once ago, I'm grateful now that there are blood thinners that enables me to have greens, because for about 9 to 10 years, I've been on warfarin, and it's at 12.5 milligrams a day. And my blood have been in a good range. Now I'm taking Eloquist, and I'm grateful that I can take that and be able to eat greens and have that extra vitamins in my body. So I'm encouraging persons who are living with autoimmune disease to try their best to live healthy, exercise, and swim, take a little walk, and eat healthy. I know you might say it's expensive, but it is worth it in the end. Local, it helps. Sweet potato, the ground provision, greens, the local, you'll find it out there, it's cheaper. It helps. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Victorine, for sharing, and thank you to the other two panelists, Tracy, Cindy, Shandy, Victorine. We do appreciate you coming and sharing your experience. And just allow me to highlight some of the things that stood out for me with what the panelists, what these panelists expressed, ways that they cope with their diagnosis. The first thing that came out for me is support. All three panelists spoke about support from family and friends and how important it is in coping with or living with non-communicable diseases. The other thing that came out was spirituality. Some person, well, Vicky in particular, spoke to how trusting God, leaning into her spirituality has helped her to cope. And I've heard the importance of leading a healthy lifestyle in terms of changes in your diet and becoming more active. So I want to thank the panelists for sharing their experiences. And we have some comments in the chat that the stories are very inspiring indeed. And we also have a question that I guess one of the medical experts can respond to. The question is, can lupus turn into cancer? So can one of the presenters from the first segment respond to that question?
Dr. Babu, are you there still? Can you respond? Dr. Pierre, Dr. Sebastian. Okay, we'll follow up with that question later.
All right, so from listening to the presentations, I also understand that persons are directly affected by the non-communicable diseases, and also from Tracy and Cindy's story, that persons are also indirectly affected in the form of family members. And as a school counselor, I can attest to this. I've experienced dealing with students who have family members who are either diabetic or hypertensive or have been diagnosed with some form of cancer, and it does impact the family member. I know that they're not it's difficult for the individual living with it, but it's also difficult for family members as well. So we know that everyone needs support, and this also highlights the importance of trying as much as possible to pay attention to our modifiable risk factors that the panelists spoke about in segment 1, and try as much as possible to reduce the risk factors. Eat healthily, exercise daily, avoid excessive use of alcohol and smoking to reduce the risk of having to live with any of the non-communicable diseases, because as highlighted in all of the presentations, that these are the leading causes of death, not only globally, but specific to St. Kitts and Nevis as well. So we can now move into segment 3 of this session. And in segment 3, because we've already heard about what the non-communicable diseases are, the ones specific to this session, and persons' personal experiences with living with these non-communicable diseases. Now, what do we have here? What do we have in St. Kitts Nevis to support individuals who live with non-communicable diseases? So in this segment, we heard a bit from Tracy and Cindy about the Pink Lily Cancer Care Center, but I would like to invite them back just to give us a bit more information about the organization and what exactly does the organization do, and how can it be accessed to persons who are interested in joining the organization. How do they go about reaching out? So I invite Tracy and Cindy to give us some more information about the Pink Lily Care.
Good afternoon again. Yes, Pink Lily was founded by my sister Lee, like I said, after herself and my mum were diagnosed with breast cancer. We were launched in Nevis February 9, 2008. And from then, we've just been getting better and better. Unfortunately, cancer isn't going to leave us anytime soon. So we do what we can to support people, like we said before. We do fundraising. We have an annual walkathon to raise funds, because what I find is the biggest problem our clients have is finance. And to be quite honest, it grieves my heart, the kind of prices that the people have, the monies that people have to find for treatment. That's the hardest part. Sometimes they just initially call us for financial help. But obviously, like I said, we do help them. We're a non-profit, we're a non-political organization. We do not have a steady or regular financial support system. So we try to do our own fundraisers, breakfast sales, annual walkathon, and such like. We have a support group that we had started. So we've had to shut a lot of that down due to COVID in terms of in person, but there's not a day goes by that we don't actually talk to our clients on the phone. I say clients too, but once Pink Lily are contacted, you're no longer a client, you become a member of the Pink Lily family. We're all family. And I don't know if it's because Nevis is so small and people know more or less everybody. I find as a support coordinator for Pink Lily, you get really attached. So when we say family, we mean family. We get so attached. So when we do lose someone, it makes it that much harder because you've come bonded with that person, and it makes it difficult all over again. It makes your journey harder to see you losing loved ones because they become our loved ones. So basically we're there on a daily basis, phone calls. We have clients in St. Kitts also from the beginning. I am in contact with, not once if you're a survivor, we have survivors that have survived more than 10 years that I still speak to on a daily basis, just to see how they're doing, how they, how their last checkup went, how their family's doing. We're still in contact with people's family that persons have passed, because I always say when the funeral is done, people forget you. They forget that you still, when you're a person that's lost someone, the funeral is done and they're left to go home and grieve by themselves. And they think that's it. So it's really important for us to make sure that the family members are okay, because like depression comes in again, depression of loneliness, the depression of grief, and so on and so forth. We do house visits, we do church visits, we do business talk, we go to businesses and talk about cancer all the time. As much as we can be out there, we are out there. People know us on the street, they stop us on the street now. They stop us on the street, ask us questions, and I never refuse a phone call. If I miss a phone call, I call it. I have to call it back, because I always say it could be somebody trying to reach out. So you cannot, I don't ignore any phone calls that I miss. Cindy's there. Wherever I go, Cindy goes. She's got my back. She's not just a cancer survivor. She's my sister from another mother. Her and my sister were best friends. And I think if anything, it's made us closer, because she's been through her journey, not just as a survivor, but losing her dad. And she lost my sister as well. So for Cindy to lose my sister as well, I know for a fact she felt it as much as I did. That's how close we were. It's still difficult for me. My sister would have passed 2 years, December the 1st, and it's hard. I wouldn't lie. It's hard. Sorry for getting emotional. It's emotional. It's a journey. It's difficult. So like I said, when we have clients that pass, it's not just like a stranger passing. It's like you're losing your family all over again. And so it just brings everything back. So, and I'm the support coordinator, but I have Cindy to support me. We have a spiritual support person in our Pink Lily team. We have a handful of dedicated volunteers that we meet regular, and they're there. We're just there for each other. But Cindy, I would say, is my biggest supporter, especially in terms of keeping Pink Lily going for my sister. We can't let her down. Our dream, the dream of Pink Lily, is to open a cancer awareness and support center and a care retreat in Nevis that provides the information, the education, the support, and the care for cancer sufferers and their families in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we're not giving up on that dream. It will happen one day, God willing. But it's important. Like I said before in the other segment, love and support is the biggest. You have to be there for each other. And like I said before as well, we have an issue. People still do not want to tell people. I've heard people tell me because of the financial constraints. Some say, I'd rather not know, I just die. I spend that money there because I'm going to die anyway. And that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. People say it all the time. I can't afford it. So straight away, when they hear the prices that they have to come up with, the monies that they have to find for a treatment, these people, some of them just give up one time. And that's so unfortunate. So we have to encourage people that early detection saves lives, go for your regular checkups. Dr. Twait comes here every year prior to COVID, every year. And Pink Lily would go to them sessions and give out leaflets on prostate cancer and testicular cancer. We did a fundraiser where we raised $50,000 to have screened 200 women. 200 women, yeah, 200. And out of 200, we actually did 204 women. And thanks to Dr. Mark Hodge, she gave us a discount, so we were able to do more women in St. Kitts. And out of the 204, one person was found with breast cancer. Unfortunately, thankfully, she's still with us and doing well, but there was a mention of lupus earlier. So she's been through the fight of cancer, and now she has to deal with lupus as well on top of that. But she has a strong spirit, a strong faith in God. And I believe a lot of them, without their faith in God, I don't think it would, and the support of family, they wouldn't get through it.
Nope.
So it's our job as a Pink Lily team to make sure people know that we're there for them. It's important. If no one else is there for them, we're there for them day and night, 24/7. Our phones are free to be called at any time. So we have a Pink Lily page on Facebook. And like I said, a lot of people, our numbers are on there. People can contact us, but mostly, especially in Nevis, they just stop us on the street. And I'm glad people feel, my sister left a legacy when she decided to share her journey. And we're just gonna make sure that her legacy lives and that we're here, as God willing, as long as we're on this earth, that we will continue the work to support people suffering from cancer and their families. So that's all I can say. We have a lot of love in it. So we just want to, it's personal as well. It's from the heart, and we just want to know that, we just want people to know that we're there for them all the time.
All right, thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing. And I encourage all of us to go and check out the Pink Lily Care Cancer page on Facebook. And I want to commend the Pink Lily Cancer Care Center for your support and advocacy over the year for persons living with cancer, having been diagnosed and living with cancer. And I want to encourage you to continue that support. And I do look forward to you being able to open your doors for your cancer center in Nevis. Keep up the good work and continue the advocacy. Our next presenter will be a representative from the St. Kitts Diabetes Association. So I invite Ms. Christine Watley to give us some more information about this association.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
My task is to speak about the association, what we do, and what we stand for. The role of the St. Kitts Diabetes Association is to promote diabetes care, prevention, and support for persons living with diabetes in St. Kitts. In looking at our role and what we do, we provide health education and information to persons living with diabetes and members of the St. Kitts Diabetes Association. We develop and deliver, we involved in developing and delivering outreach programs, networking, and mentoring. We host quarterly meetings, hosting quarterly meetings for the members of the St. Kitts Diabetes Association for information sharing and membership support. There's a platform for information sharing by members of the association in a WhatsApp chat. The association conducts screening activities in schools and in workplaces. Conduct annual awareness campaign during the week of activities in November every year. And there's a partnership with the Ministry of Health and the Lions Club. We also try to get incentives for our members, like getting free, a company gave us free glucometers at some point, and also getting discounted prices on glucometers and on strips, which are very expensive. That is what we do.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Watley, for all your work with the Diabetes Association and for sharing with us this afternoon. So just to recap, she says that the Diabetes Association not only offers support for the members, but they also do screenings at workplaces and schools. And I, for one, can attest to the significance of that activity, because I have seen some of my students being diagnosed with diabetes from this very same activity conducted by the Diabetic Association. So it is important work, and I encourage you to continue doing that work. And we do look forward to your week of activities in November. And I invite the host, Nurse Mary Keynes, to invite the other panelists for segment 3. Ms. Keynes.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Forbes, for your participation. We'll now move along, and we will invite back Miss Victorine Hanley of the SKN Lupus Hope Foundation to share some information about their foundation, what they do, how they assist persons living with lupus. Miss Hanley.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Well, our foundation is newly formed. We were formed this year, 1st May 2021. And let me just state, we are NGO, we are non-governmental organization and non-political. Our main goal right now is to spread awareness by increasing public knowledge about lupus and autoimmune diseases, especially for business entities to have an understanding and empathy with their staff members living with an autoimmune disease. We actually had planned activities for this year, but within 2 weeks of the said activities, we had to postpone, and then all of them, well, we had to cancel them because of the heightened COVID-19 community spread. So right now we don't actually have funding, whereas we can support persons monetarily because we are newly formed. So let me just put that out there. I know medication, etc., for people living with autoimmune is not easy. It's very, very expensive. So that is a thought we have in mind later down when we actually raise some funds and come up with some monies, or perhaps get some sort of sponsorship. We currently have a WhatsApp group. We support each other, we educate each other about lupus, bearing in mind that not every lupus case or symptom are the same. Everybody don't have the same symptoms. So persons would experience different symptoms to others. So we share and we educate each other about what we go through. We send encouraging words to each other. We share recipes, etc. So the telephone number is 660-8673, and that's for Miss Keisha Isaac. She's the president of the group, and I'm the vice president. So if you want to be a part of our foundation, you can contact Ms. Keisha Isaac and she'll liaise with you as to how to go about being a part of our foundation. I also encourage other persons who don't have autoimmune disease, but perhaps support persons or want to be a part of it to join our group as well, because there are times when we are not able to go about partaking in certain activities, and we would appreciate the support of healthy bodies to assist us with certain activities. So that's mostly it in a nutshell. We are newly organized, we are newly formed group, so we appreciate the help and support of the general public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hanley, and thank you for providing us well-needed support for persons living with lupus. Your organization is new, and just being out there can bring that needed support for persons who have been challenged by the complications that comes with living with lupus. We now have a little twist where we reach out to those persons who provide the medication for our persons living with NCDs, and the pharmacists, they provide a unique support to persons living with NCDs in terms of education about their medication. So with no further ado, I will call on Ms. Vanessa Matthew, Chief Pharmacist at the JNF Hospital, to speak to us about the support that they provide to persons living with NCDs. Ms. Matthew?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am very happy to be a part of this forum, and on behalf of the Pharmacy Association of Shrimpage and Navies, I extend heartfelt thank you, and I really do. I am touched. I have been touched by the stories from persons living with the NCDs, and I am happy that, you know, these stories, not that they have happy endings, but they do have happy endings because they also speak to the fact that they did get the support they need from family, and that is also important. And it brings us back, or it brings me back to the role the pharmacist played. And a lot of times, persons will see the pharmacist as that person who sits or stands behind the counter, who takes a prescription, who counts tablets, gives you the instruction, and that's it. And our job is so much more than that. Apart from dispensing, the pharmacist is also needed to offer medication therapy, to indicate the appropriate way to take your medication, to the safe therapy for the medication. Meaning, a patient may come to the pharmacy with a prescription, with possibly their insulin, possibly their inhaler, and the therapy, how will they use it? They're not too sure. Maybe they are not using it the correct way. And so it's our job to ensure that the way they are using it is correct, ensure that the method, the advice that they are given by the doctor is actually followed. And so that's also a part of our job. We also analyze the treatment that's given to see that you are given these 6 medications, is this combination really being effective? Because sometimes the patient will not see the doctor until another 2 months, 6 weeks, and so on. And so the pharmacist is one of the persons who that person will be able to see on a more frequent basis to ensure that he or she is getting the best therapeutic effect with all of these medications. And so we also provide counseling, and that is a big part because the patient at times need to be advised. Sometimes it is overwhelming for them to be taking all of these medications. Sometimes we see our newly diagnosed patients, sometimes these may be diabetic patients, sometimes these may be asthmatic patients, newly hypertensive patients, and we see them from juvenile all the way up to adulthood. And it is our job to help them to be comfortable with their medication, because if they are not comfortable with their medication, if they're not comfortable with the treatment, if they're not comfortable with what is required by the doctor, then we're not going to get a very good result from this treatment. So it is our job to ensure. So we have to come to them. Sometimes also it is necessary for us to have follow-up, meaning a patient may come and he or she, it's the first time he or she may be taking medication. It's the first time the dose has been adjusted for the drug. And so we'll advise them, okay, come back and see me in another 2 days' time. So I'll be able to say, I'll be able to assess the situation. I'll say, or we'll say, you need to go back and see your doctor because XYZ is a problem. Or are you comfortable with the new dosing regimen? And so listening to all the doctors this afternoon, we see where it is a team effort, because I need to keep in touch with the patient. I also need to keep the doctor updated with what is happening with this individual patient. And so there is a channel, there is the avenue where we are able to communicate together. The doctor, the pharmacist, the nurses, the person in the lab, physiotherapy, X-ray, everybody should come together, and everybody do try on many occasions to really work together. But of course, there are issues. There are times when we just can't help it. There are always loopholes, there are always cracks, there's always something that is causing it not to happen the way we want. In a sense, we do try to ensure that everybody.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Sorry, Miss Mackey, your mic is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, there are times when we have to solve or address medical related problems, and with these problems, you will find that from time to time there may be an error in the dosage, there may be an error in the drug. Maybe there are some contraindications with the drugs that have been prescribed, and so we have to address those problems as well. We increase the patient awareness and adherence. You know, we ensure that you follow the instructions. If you have any questions, please return to the pharmacy, ask questions, let us communicate with the doctor. Also, another important thing is that we offer this support not just to the patient, but we also offer the support to the caregivers as well, because from time to time, depending on the age of the patient, depending on the status of the patient, it is a caregiver who will come to the pharmacy. And so we have to keep that dialogue with that relative, with that caregiver as well, to ensure the best patient care for this patient. And so we have, for example, we have the oncology unit at the hospital. Many times it is a caregiver who comes to the pharmacy. And so we have to communicate with that individual. And as the lady from the Pink Lily said, it is, you get so involved with your patient because St. Kitts is such a very intimate country, and the society is so close that if you come to the pharmacy, if you come to any institution for like 5 times, we already know you, we know you by name. And so when you lose a patient, it does break your heart. And so we don't just see them as patients, they are our friends, they are our families, and so we treat them as such. And it's a very long list. And so our job, we are managing addiction. We are able to pick up the addiction, which is a very unique thing that can happen in St. Kitts, again, because we are so small. I am able to call any of the pharmacists, be it at the hospital, be it in the private sector, to find out, have you seen this patient? Do you know of this patient? And so we're able to track our patients, we're able to track the addiction because you're coming here very often. And we are able to help and identify patients with depression, because sometimes, because you are so close with them, you are able to speak with them outside of just taking the medication 1 tablet 3 times a day. You can speak to them because you see their body language. Last month when they came, they were in high spirits. Today, they are not so happy. What is the problem? You know, why are you so sad? Or they may even open up to you and say, this is the situation. And one of the things that I've also done is share my number, my personal number with my patients, because you may just need that private conversation. And I have always given them that opportunity to speak with me on a private basis so that we can get the best outcome for our patients. And we also need to reduce the risk of one of the things we find that our patients who may have lost the train of thought. One of our patients who may have maybe thrombosis and those thrombotic disorders, we are able to follow up with them because these drugs are very possible dangerous if they are not used and the patients are not monitored correctly. And so it is wide the job that we have to do for our patients, and we do it with love, and we do care about them, and we do try as much to follow up with them, ensure that they are on their medication, ensure that they follow up with their doctors. There are times, especially in the private sector, I know that a patient will come without a prescription, and that is something that we do not encourage. But however, we can't help but have situations like this. And one thing I will say is that you come 1 time, you come 2 times, the 3rd time you need to present a prescription, because it means that you are not keeping up with your medication. It is also your responsibility. It's also your responsibility to ensure that you are healthy and that you are doing what you need to do to stay healthy. So you have to take up the responsibility of visiting the doctor, of getting your medication, of speaking to somebody if you need support. And so I will stop here, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of pharmacists. As I said, it's a very wide topic, so I try to pull out a few pointers so that persons can get a better feeling and understanding of what we do as pharmacists. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Matthew, and your staff at the pharmacy and members of the St. Kitts Nevis Pharmacists Association. Thank you for your support that you have been providing to persons living with NCDs when they access your services for medication or even a brief conversation to assist them through that period. We'll now hear from the Social Security Office, which will give us their input in providing that support for persons living with NCDs. For this afternoon, we will have Ms. Camila Lawrence, PRO, and Ms. Sandra De Silva, Customer Service Representative of the St. Kitts and Nevis Social Security, and they will be providing what support and benefits they have at the Social Security to assist persons living with NCDs. Ms. Lawrence?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. The Social Security Board is pleased that the Ministry of Health and all involved are taking a proactive role, and steps taken here today have shown that we are serious about the health of our nation. Kudos to the organization and to the organizers as well. Now, the role of Social Security, as all of us look forward to, is age pension. But more than age pension, Social Security provides a host of short-term benefits. We take care of the insured populace between the ages of 16 to 62. And we know the popular benefits offered by Social Security: sickness, maternity, short-term, funeral grant, and so on. But most importantly, Social Security is here for the long-term age pensions and invalidity benefits, amongst others. Now, today, my role is simply to highlight some of the work we do and also to provide the participants here with information about the impact of increasing NCDs on Social Security. Mr. Silva will talk a bit more about the support we offer to insured persons. You may hear us refer to them as IPs, insured persons who visit our Social Security offices. Now, Social Security is not new to such partnerships such as this. We recently, last year, we partnered with the St. Kitts Nevis Medical and Dental Association to put on a forum where we brought doctors and practitioners together along with Social Security to foster better relationships in how we relate to each other, how we provide information to each other, and for us to create that synergy going forward. We recognize that the impact on Social Security is a tremendous one, and the figures are really showing heightened numbers, drastic increases in the number of NCD cases. This in turn means that there's an impact on the Social Security fund. If we have less contributions coming in, but we are expending more to take care of our insured persons, at some point we will have a deficit. And we sure don't want to have a deficit. It is important that the health of our nation, as cliche as it sounds, is truly the wealth of our nation. So it's important for us to foster programs and partnerships that will bring about the needed change we need to see to get those numbers down. We know the modifiable ones, the doctors were here before talking about those, but it's important for us to eat right, exercise, and practice healthy lifestyles. Now, I want to highlight some amazing figures before I give Ms. De Silva an opportunity to share some information. Between January 2021 to May 2021, just for diabetes alone, we had a total of 59 new cases or 59 claims for Social Security. Some between the ages of 25 to 29, and the heightened cases we're seeing amongst women. That may not be because women are not eating more healthily, but maybe it could be because women more often go to the doctor to seek medical attention as opposed to men. So we're seeing increased numbers. And just for that period alone, between January to May 2021, we would have expended $44,417.53. Mind you, this information is for diabetes only. So if we could look at other NCDs, you could recognize that the numbers are increasing and it is a tall wage bill. Social Security is about the business of ensuring that the insured persons have their benefits. You work, you contribute, you benefit. Similarly, we have to follow programs to ensure that the health of the working population is enhanced. And so I just wanted to bring attention to those numbers. Just between January to May, 59 claims for sickness alone, totaling over $40,000. And we know we are already in September, so I can assure you those numbers have increased. So I'll now turn to Sandra, so she will tell you about the support that we provide. Perhaps she could speak about how people could claim, but also the customer service care that we provide when persons come to our office for service. Mr. Silva?
Good evening. I'm Sandra De Silva. So this evening, I'd like to share some information from customer service standpoint. Now, there are persons out there who, because of diabetes, they're unable to work. And so they just stop working. I want persons, or we as Social Security, we want persons who are not able to work to come in and find out their status if they can make a claim. If the doctor, you go to a doctor, the doctor said you're suffering from diabetes, you're unable to work, you submit your claim. Now you can claim up to 26 weeks, which 6 months of illness. And that's diabetes we're talking about. Now, if after 6 months, 26 weeks, you're still suffering from that illness, you will move into invalidity, which is a pension, and that will continue until the doctors say that you're fit for work or you're just not able to ever go back out to work. Now, we have persons out there who are unable to work, they start going to the doctor and they stop. So we may have claims come in, we may have one claim, maybe 2 weeks, another claim, maybe 3 weeks, and then there is no more. And suddenly, as time passes, you may come in and say, listen, I'm unable to work. And we see that based on your illness, your prior illness, that you were able to continue this illness up to a maximum of 6 months before you can move into a long-term, which we call invalidity benefit. So we don't want persons out there to can't work because of diabetes and just stop working without visiting our office. Come to our office if you're unable to. You can always call us 465-2535 and ask us questions. Let us know that you're unable to work because you're suffering from this illness, diabetes, and how we can help you. We have discovered that persons are out there in need of assistance. And because they did not come in or ask someone, they're out there without any benefit and they're entitled to benefit. As usual, if you're working, we need at least 8 weeks out of 13 weeks, which we normally say 2 months out of 3 months to qualify. But you may not, even if you don't qualify because you're not immediately in employment, for sickness benefit because of diabetes, you may qualify for invalidity benefit because of the diabetes and unable to work. And that invalidity benefit is 3 years of contributions, which we say 150 contributions paid. So we don't want persons because you feel that you're no longer unable to work, you go to the doctor and you stay away. Or you just tell yourself, listen, based on my illness, the way the diabetes is affecting me, I'm not able to work anymore. And you just stop working. No. Come to us and let us know how we can help you at Social Security. That's it for now. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, I hope we were clear and that you understand your rights and responsibilities. If you are unsure, your doctors will advise you. Once your claim forms are properly completed and you bring them to our office, we'd be happy to explain how long you'd be in receipt of such a benefit, what benefit change may occur, because after 6 months of being on sickness, your benefit changes to another type of benefit called invalidity. So if you are uncertain about your state of your claim form, You can visit our offices on Bay Road, Bastia, or in Pinnis on Nevis. Our numbers are 465-2535 or 469-5245. We'd be happy to help you. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I pray that we continue to be safe and further for us to have these sorts of engagement on a more frequent basis so that we can in fact make an impact on the health of our nation. Thank you for having Social Security.
And thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this timely forum, interactive forum, and informative forum. So we have reached to the end of our panel list. We have reached the end of all of our panelists for this afternoon session. And it really has been a very informative session. I know I have enjoyed the information, and I know persons have gone away with information that they can share to help somebody living with an NCD, if not for their own use. We'll now have questions and answers for persons wishing to ask questions. You can type your question in the chat, and the questions will be asked or directed to the appropriate personnel. There is one question which I shared with the medical doctors, and that question is there a collective strategy to combat NCDs in the Federation? Any of the medical doctors still present, can you give your input? If there is such, plan for a collective strategy in order to help to combat NCDs. Dr. Babu?
Yes, Ms. Keynes. Yes, it is a very much preventable disease, non-communicable disease. But then for our federation with a small population, we can do wonders, provided the patients or the individuals are also interested to take care of their health. Okay, we can bring legal aspect in controlling tobacco and alcohol, but I don't think that is a workable solution. The best part is to educate community-wise, go and individualize the education about their health, about the non-communicable disease, how they have to eat, what they have to do, minimal exercise. They don't have to spend money to go to gym. Gentle walking is sufficient. So pros, cons of tobacco, alcohol should be educated. So going to the community, that is the best way of educating the individuals. So unless until they show the interest, we cannot change the scenario. That is the only solution to prevent the non-communicable disease. Other than the medications, medication is the last. Prevention is the best solution. Thank you, Ms. Keynes.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. Any of the other physicians want to share?
Hi, Sister Keynes. Just to add to what Dr. Babu has said, I think education, patient education is a very important aspect. I think the struggle that patients face right now, and it is, I don't think we ever as a medical community or as a society ever dealt with the phenomena of misinformation as we're dealing with right now. I think the challenge a lot of patients face is deciding what is truth, what is the right information to follow. Patients are confused, even doctors themselves are confused because you have information coming out from all different sources, and we just do not share a common baseline of facts. And I think patient education is extremely important. But I'll go further to say that I think the question was regarding whether there's a strategy. I'm not aware of a singular strategy. I know that everyone in their respective roles are doing their best. But I think, we've spoken about this before, Sister Kins, and I think, again, opportunities like this show us why it's so important for all of us to come together and really adopt this all of society approach. From the standardization of care is important. It means that a patient should be able to go anywhere and get the same kind of care and that they would get at the hospital, whether it's in the private practice. So that's important from the professional standpoint, and that standardization of care is extremely important. A lot of patients go around and medications are changed by one doctor to another, and patients go doctor shopping because sometimes the patient wants an easy way out, right? But I think if we're all speaking the same language, I think that's going to be extremely helpful. The other aspect of it, of course, is the support of government from the policy standpoint. I think that's the role of government to put in place policies. We've discussed sweet sugar beverages. We've spoken of something called a sin tax in different forums. The question is whether there is, and I'm not saying that this is the way to go, but I'm saying that it's worth exploring. I know those things sometimes are politically unpopular. They're not politically expedient, but the question is, when you face the situation where we have a dearth of resources for long-term care, we don't have a stroke unit, we don't have a cardiac center, and we don't have the resources, endocrinologists and the likes, to really care for our diabetic patients in the way. So I think we have to place an emphasis on prevention. I would end my point by saying, from the preventative aspect of it, the primary health care is where I think a lot of emphasis needs to be placed. In terms of the role of our DMOs, our community aides, these individuals, I think it is so important that role is played there. We have been sort of essentially chasing our tails, so to speak, in the sense that we keep being very reactive to things, but I think it's now time to develop a very proactive approach. I think if there's anything that we leave here with this, recognizing just how important this is, just how big a challenge it is, and just how one person alone cannot do it. So I think it's really important time to get the right people around the table from all different aspects of spheres of our community, and let's start a conversation and let's develop a national strategy to tackle NCDs.
Thank you, Dr. Pierre. Dr. O'Loughlin from the Sinkers Diabetes Association. Do you want to give your input?
Yes, good evening. Yeah, the Sinkers Diabetes Association recognizes that there are lots of challenges facing the control of diabetes amongst the sufferers. And we identify some of the main challenges. One, males. Males do not want to come forward with that diagnosis because of the taboo way in which it is treated. That's the first problem. So that is why you would find, when you examine the numbers of attendees at the various clinics, you would see at least twice as many females attending the various health centers as males. And that is not because of a 2-to-1 ratio in relation to diabetes for males against females. It is because men are just hiding with their disease, or some are going privately to seek care. The second thing is that organizations like the Sinkers Diabetes Association, like the Cancer Society, they have forums, they organize forums. At least I can speak for the Sinkers Diabetes Association, but people are not coming out in the numbers in which you would expect them. Our association estimates that there are over 3,000 with a capital T diabetics in St. Kitts. But yet when we have forums which are free, not only free, but we send transportation all around the island to bring people to the forums, we do not get a healthy turnout. And those forums are geared specifically to educate people on this particular condition. So in terms of a national strategy, it's really difficult when, as Dr. Pierce said, and as Dr. Babu said, people are not responding to the freeness that is available. The things that are being done, they only come out when they get the diagnosis. Surprisingly, when you get a male with the diagnosis of diabetes, it comes when the toe is ready to be amputated, or when the impotence is advanced and he's getting trouble, maybe horn they call it, you see. So these are some of the challenges which would make it difficult to, in as much as you have a strategy implemented with all of the different SSB controls and syntaxes and so on, unless people are going to respond to those things, it would always be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Matthew? Ms. Matthew?
Yes, good evening again. Just to add to what the doctors have said, I believe Dr. Olapin said that they are not coming out and they're not responding to the invites to these sessions. And I know that, and I would want to think that there are other health-related sessions that would have been advertised and even for free, and they are not coming out. But I think maybe the approach that we are using could be, we need to modernize it. If you usually send it over the radio, how many persons really do listen to the radio these days? More persons, even if they do listen to the radio, they're listening to the radio online. A lot of persons are on Facebook and WhatsApp. So maybe we need to use the different avenues, the more modernized way of spreading the word, and possibly that could help as well. I also believe that if we start really teaching the children from a younger age, what these situations are, what these diseases look like, and actually see young people suffering or having these diseases and getting their stories, because sometimes they feel that it is for mommies, for daddies, for grandma. They don't think that them at 12, at 10, at 6 can actually get these diseases. So if they see persons really suffering from these conditions, then they will actually start pulling up themselves, because if you prevent it from early, then when they get older, these things will not be a problem. And one more thing, two more things. Networking is also very, very important. And I have been in many forums where we say we need to, but we don't do. So we need to actually do what we say we want to do, which is network. I have been in so many meetings where persons say, oh, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, everybody needs to work together, and it ends there. But we need to really do that, because if we really mean patient care, then we really need to do patient care. And if we, as you said, sister, no step, nothing is too small, just do something little. At the hospital, we do try networking, we do try communicating with the doctors and so on. And the last thing is possibly there could be also be a reduced rate for the equipment that we are encouraging them to exercise. Not everybody wants to go to the gym, not everybody wants this. Possibly, if there's a reduced rate to bring in these equipment that may be needed to do the various exercise, if some incentive for persons who will want to set up a yoga unit, a gym, or whatever, to encourage persons to really go. And I think if we, as you say, network and work together and come from different angles, we will get some results. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthew, for your input. We are almost at the end of our program, our session this afternoon, and I just want to say thank you for all who have joined us this afternoon. This forum has indeed been an informative, interactive, and dynamic session, not forgetting emotional. No forum is complete without expressing heartfelt gratitude to all of our presenters this afternoon who took the time out to share their expertise and experience to our listening audience. Thank you to the families who provide support to our presenters or persons living with NCDs. Just want to say thank you to my co-host, Chanel, and thank you to ZIZ, the technician who assisted us with streaming this event live on ZIZ and also on the YouTube channel. thank you for the various organizations who accepted our invitation in speaking to us about the support that they provide. Pink Lily Care, the SKN Lupus Foundation, the Sinkis Diabetes Association. We also heard from the Social Security, who lets us know that if you have questions in terms of your claims, in terms of the services that they provide, their doors are open and they are ready to help us, to serve us. Just want to say thanks to our 5 doctors or 5 specialists who gave that in-depth information about the different NCDs that are facing persons are challenged with within our community. There might not be a national strategy in place at the moment, but that is something that we can work towards. The solutions are there. The Health Promotion Unit has, on the past 2 years, has put on SKN Moves, which encourages persons to be active, move about, and that's a 7-week campaign. Also, the Caribbean Wellness Week, which starts from today and ends on the 17th of September. Those are also programs and strategies that we have initiated within the Ministry of Health and the Health Promotion Unit to help persons to defer the effects of non-communicable diseases. Just want to say also thank you to members and staff of the Ministry of Health for their support, the epidemiologist for his the situation analysis report, the DMOs, and all other physicians who have came on board and assisted and showed their support by just being here to be part of this seminar. We had also with us persons living with disabilities who did enjoy the forum. Thank you for being part of our audience, our listening audience. Chanel, you have any final words?
Hi, yes, I would just like to thank you as well for inviting me to be a part of this very informative forum. Thank you to all the persons who participated, besides medical experts. I want to commend the persons who shared their very personal experiences and letting us into the life of living with non-communicable diseases. Your testimonies were not only emotional, but very inspirational. I would also like to thank the organizations that offer support to all individuals living with non-communicable diseases. And I want to encourage these organizations to continue the support and the advocacy. And I have some major takeaways. It is very important for us to try to lead as much as possible healthy lives, healthy diet, regular exercising, rest, and let's try to get those numbers down. So once again, thank you to everyone for participating.
Okay, to our participants, we have an evaluation form for persons to complete when the session ends. So you can complete that evaluation. It's an anonymous survey. Just want to get your feedback in regards to the session that you were part of. Any final words from anyone? Dr. Babu? Dr. Kati?
A pleasant good night to everyone. Can everyone hear me well?
We can.
I want to thank everyone for being a part of this webinar this afternoon. This was a very important webinar, especially for us here living in St. Kitts and Nevis. As we know, as was mentioned earlier, that NCDs are the leading cause of death. And so to be able to share this information with the general public. I think it was a very important endeavor. I want to thank our hosts for doing such an excellent job in making sure that this webinar came off well. And to our presenters, thank you so much for taking the time out to be a part of this webinar and sharing your knowledge and your experiences with the listening audience. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to the rest of the activities that we have coming up during this week. This is our Caribbean Wellness Week, as Nurse Keynes mentioned. So on Tuesday, the 14th, we have our National Fruit Day. So we're encouraging persons to eat their fruits and vegetables, and remember that it's 5 to 9 servings that will help to keep those NCDs away. And then on Friday, we have our National Sneaker Day, which is a day that we promote physical activity. So we're encouraging persons to don your sneakers and do more walking during that day. And then we culminate all of this, both our Caribbean Wellness Week as well as our SKN Moves 7-week campaign, with our annual soak size. This is going to be held on the flow grounds. The poster has been going out. We have a link for persons to register. Please come out and just exercise to some good soca music, as persons will say, and just have a lot of fun as we bring all of our events for the 7-week campaign for SKN Moves to a close. Again, I say thank you so very much for your participation.
Thank you, Dr. Carty. And we have reached the end of this seminar. And again, I say thanks to all. See you and continue to partake in the other activities for Caribbean Wellness Week and our 7-week SKN Move campaign. Thank you and good night.